The perfect time to move is what we're going to be talking about today. Before we get into all that, please like, comment, subscribe, share, all those fun things that help grow the channel. This is a continuation of the smaller form video that you may have seen on social media sites or wherever else. But today I'm going over this concept of the perfect time to move is, because most people are trying to ask me, like, when's the best time to move? When should I buy and sell? When's the interest rates the best? When's the market the best? The truth is, the perfect time to move is when you're ready. I know we try to navigate the interest rates, predict the future, look at the past of what happened, see where the market's at, what it's going to do. But honestly, what it matters more to look at is not all these external factors and situations, but more of your internal factors and situations based on your life and where it's at. And there's three common places that I've seen that people are in the right space to move. And I'm going to break some of those down and some considerations that come into when the perfect time for you to move is. One of the first ones is first time home buyers. Second one's first time home sellers. And the third one is the empty nester, downsizer, possibly even the what do you want to call it? Inheritance house, moving to the assisted living facility, that kind of house that goes with that. So, and some of the different factors that go into that for you to consider to determine when the perfect time for you to move is. Because ultimately, at the end of the day, your life situation is going to dictate when the perfect time to move is, more than the market, more than interest rates, more than anything else. Because one of the worst things I've seen people do is wait and delay. And there's kind of another phrase we use where it's like the longer you wait, the worse it gets. Time kills all deals. All these situations where we've seen, like, you don't want to rush in anything and you don't want to be pushed and pressured and sold in anything, but you also don't want to go on the other side where you hesitate or you wait, you sit on sidelines and you never do anything. Because ultimately, this game of real estate is more around making the right moves with your money and the right life situation, and then owning a home and letting it appreciate from an equity standpoint is really what you're looking at. Because ultimately, at the end of the day, you got to pay to live somewhere. You're either going to pay to rent or you're going to pay a mortgage. If you pay to rent, it's 100% interest rate out the window. Don't see anything for it. Yes, I know it is simpler and easier, and I'm not knocking renting because it makes sense in certain situations. Like if you're going to live somewhere for a year or two, renting makes sense. If you're going to live somewhere for 3 years or longer, you should buy a house. That's typically the like rule of thumb that I help people to understand which one they should do. And also on the third one, when I get into it for the empty nester downsizer, we're seeing a lot of people rent. And honestly, if you go to an assisted living center, it is renting. So there's not all situations where it makes sense to own. And we're seeing a lot more people go to rentals for their immediate short-term needs, not just like a year or two renting, but also a rise in midterm rentals, like fully furnished rentals. If you need to rent somewhere for like a month to 3 months, either as a working professional or just temporary living situation, those I've seen are becoming more popular, which is not the same thing as a short-term rental, which is like Airbnb type of a situation. But with all that, I'm going to get into the first one. The perfect time to move for you as a first-time home buyer is when you have thoroughly prepared yourself for owning a home. And I don't just mean like, hey, I got the money, because you need to plan for a down payment, which there are down payment assistance programs that you can do 0% down. There's USDA rural programs that are 0% down. I don't recommend them if you don't have to use them, because when you study the financial product, it really doesn't put you in that great of a place for the second time when you start to become a first-time home seller, because you really haven't gained much equity because of that loan product, or you have to live in it for such a long time that it's hard to actually see appreciation because you're just getting eaten alive in interest rates and fees and everything else goes with it. So I have a hard time recommending that to people unless it's a last resort option, or it's the only thing that they can really work through, or just they got to have it. But I fully advise people, like, this probably isn't your best interest to do this. But FHA, you can put 3.5% down on purchase price. So on a $100,000 house, that's $3,500. On a $200,000 house, that's $7,000. So the biggest peak about this, the perfect time to move, is all about strategy, and I'm all about strategy. Yes, we are technically marketing and sales agents, but really I approach this as a strategist with you to help you make decisions in order to end up making a sale that comes from that. But it's the same thing I'd be doing if I was in your position. And why I got my license 9 years ago as an investor who still flips houses and owns my own house and plenty of property that goes with it. And I just love discussing the strategy for you. And that's really where I get my value and fees from is my strategies, not necessarily just being a nice, likable guy and they're, at the drop of a hat, like some agents. So first time home buyers, you got to plan for down payment. 3.5% is usually the lowest you can go, 5% on conventional. And usually what I typically recommend to people is 3.5% or 20% down is the two instances that make sense. Because I know some people are like, well, what if I put 5% down or 10% down? Does that help my rate at all? It's like, no, this isn't cars. And two, like your cash isn't what's appreciating. It's the house that's appreciating. So if you put 3.5% down or 10% down, it's not going to appreciate any better. So my attitude is more keep your cash in your account or in other assets and investments that can do a little bit better than like real estate in Wichita historically has been like 6 to 8%. And that's what they're predicting for 2025 is about 7.7% appreciation, on average across the board with it all. And with first time home buyers, one of the big values that I bring to the table, and honestly, every transaction is that I have a construction background. When you walk through these houses, we're going to be evaluating from a construction standpoint, visually anyway. We can't test or tamper with anything. But that way we're avoiding a lot of the big ticket items like the roof, the foundation, mechanicals to look out for ahead of time. Not just how pretty is it, how much do you like it? Like we're going to take that into consideration. But the biggest thing I want to protect you from as a first time home buyer is any big major expenses that we could avoid from the start when you see it. Because you make your money when you buy these things, not necessarily when you go to sell them. Because my whole strategy is I want you to buy the house with me, come back to me, sell it on the second situation as a first time home seller in 3 to 5 years, but it needs to appreciate and have enough equity to do that in order for that plan to actually work out with everything. So first time home buyers makes sense when you're ready, both financially, but then also you're in the mindset of it's time to take care of a house. It's time for me to buy my first house. Sometimes that can be single individuals. Sometimes that can be you just got married. Could be a lot of different reasons with that. But keep in mind the average first time home buyer is 38. So if you feel like you're behind or you feel like you're too late or you're too young for this, like the average first time home buyer is 38. Which is kind of wild to think about when you think about it. So if you're 30 buying a house, you're ahead of the curve. If you're 25 buying a house, you're really ahead of the curve. So just keep that in mind whenever you think, you're behind or somebody's rushing your timeline or you should be further ahead in life. But that's a whole nother motivational thing that we're not going to go over at this point. The second one I say is the first time home seller. The perfect time for you to move there's two pieces to this. One is when you have enough equity that you can do so and it makes sense, or two, you have outgrown the house from a personal standpoint. And usually it's kind of both that coincides. This is always the fun game to play, especially if you bought the house with me to track how much appreciation you get and equity that goes with it. But even if you haven't bought the house with me, I can still help you sell it and make that transition into the next one, because selling a house is a whole nother thing. Buying and selling a whole nother house at the same time is a whole other thing. Way different than just being a first time home buyer. And a brand newbie licensee usually can get away with working with first time home buyers, but it's this skilled transition of selling your first house and buying the next one and pulling all that off is where a skilled agent like myself really comes into play, of having 9 years of experience and doing over 400 transactions and over 150 5-star reviews. So, who you work with as an agent matters more than ever in this market. And especially when it comes time to selling your first house, and not only pricing it well, but positioning and marketing it well, but then also lining you up for the next house, whether that's a bridge loan or doing a contingent offer and pulling all that off and having a solid marketing plan so that that seller is going to accept your contingent offer on marketing and selling this home. A lot of the consideration of accepting this offer is based on your marketing plan for this house that you're selling. So there's a lot that goes into that, and you can never start too early on strategizing for that, planning for that. I'm a big prepared guy, planning guy, strategy guy. So the best time to move as a first-time home seller is kind of when all the stars align with the equity of your house. You've outgrown this house. Maybe you start to have some kids, or maybe you just want to because you can, and you got enough equity. and then you set up the right search for the next right house comes up. But it's a very much a planning and strategy process to be prepared for when opportunity presents itself, you're able to capitalize on it. So that's number two, first time home seller. The best time to move is when you have enough equity and you've outgrown the house. And then number three is the empty nester downsizer. So by this time, you should usually, if you've been living in a house for long enough, you should have a ton of equity. You should have a ton of options. You may even have it paid off free and clear or very close to it. With that, as long as you've made some smart strategic, financial situations and you haven't got yourself behind or too overloaded on the house or put too much collateral against your house. Empty nester downsizers, it's not always right when your kids move out is the perfect time to move. It's kind of when you're mentally and emotionally ready to make this transition. Because one of the biggest things I've seen with working with empty nesters, downsizers, is the fact that everything is smaller and you're basing everything off of your big house. And then you go look at houses and you're like, well, the bedroom's small or the bathroom's small, the kitchen's small. It's like, yeah, it's a downsized house. Like, and that's kind of hard to adjust to that, and get used to. Like when you have the smaller houses, they usually don't come with the big house features and amenities either. So that empty nester downsizer concept is where, like I said, I've seen a lot more people just go to renting because they get a nicer, newer house that's fully managed. They cash out on the equity of their house. They're tired of taking care of a house, and so they're like, you know what, I'm ready to just go the good life, and I don't care. I'll rent for the rest of my life, or I'll rent, in a cool urban spot or the new apartment complex or some of those duplexes that come with it. So I mean, empty nester downsizers, I'm seeing a lot of them move more towards renting a property and just cashing on their house and renting. And let's say you go rent for a year or two, and you're like, you know what, I want to go back to owning a house. And in some ways, it's more casual that way because you can sell your house, rent for a year or two, kind of enjoy that ease of lifestyle pace. Maybe you want to travel, maybe you want to jump in an RV and just go do whatever that comes with it. It's just when you're really mentally and emotionally ready for that next phase of life is really when the best time to move is for empty nesters, downsizers. That's where we can help you track the equity, track the pricing. This is where it can be strategic to launch these in February and March if you have the option to, because it's not contingent on moving somewhere else, especially if you're just selling and done. You're going to rent an RV, you're going to go rent or move to Florida, or you're going to go to an apartment complex. This is where you do want to get strategic on the time of year to sell is typically the best in February, March, right when it starts to warm up, the buyers start to come out, and that's when you have the most amount of exposure to new buyers, competitive situations, that kind of thing. And it's real slow in January. It starts to ramp up February, March, April, May gets going, and then it kind of bell curves off towards the rest of the year. And we've seen year over year, it's always historically followed that trend. It doesn't necessarily mean you can go sell your house for more or an outrageous price in February, March. It's just much more likely to sell and go into a bidding war than compared to every other time of year on everything. But hopefully that's kind of helped you figure out the perfect time to move is. I know a lot of people think it's like a investing market or these other markets where like, oh, if I time the market and time the interest rates just right, like I'll get a sweet deal. But the reality is it's more based on your life situation and your personal factors than it is all of these outside factors that we're navigating with the market, interest rates, all of that comes with it. So hopefully that helps you understand modern real estate a little bit more. If you'd like to work with me directly, follow my link below, shoot me a message, get on my schedule, and we go from there. I look forward to talking to you soon. See ya.